Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you all, anywhere you are in this beautiful world. And thank you so much for joining me to be with me in this presentation. This is about to continue our previous discussion in regards to toxicity of the world. Previously, we talked about plastic contamination in our world. We mentioned the Eastern garbage patch. We mentioned about microplastic in our food, how it enters biology and disturbs life. We talked about GMO, genetically modified food, like soy, corn, canola, and what they could do to us. We also talked about additives that are used in the food industry, 320 different substances, 44 colors, 39 preservatives, flavor enhancers, thickeners. We talked about hormones that are used in the food, like growing livestock, poultries, fisheries, how these hormones could change the quality of the food and how they could affect the quality of the health and biology. Today, I'm going to focus talking about industrial and man-made chemicals, chemical toxicity that enters the biology of life. They contaminate the entire planet, and we are not separate from our planet either. For example, there was a pesticide called DDT, which was used back in the 20th century, mainly from 1930s or early 1940s till 1970s when it was banned. It caused a lot of problem after some time. The scientists realized that there was a bioaccumulative effect, so it was deposited in the nature and never went away because there was no natural enzyme system by nature to degrade this DDT. The thing started when they realized that the number of the birds in England started to dramatically fall, especially the falcons. And then they ended up discovering that the DDT toxicity was the cause in these birds. They could also cause a lot of problems in humans, including degenerative diseases such as cancer. The Human Adipose Tissue Survey shows that they could detect DDT and its byproducts in the fat of almost every animal, from the Arctic, which is the north, to Antarctica, which is the south, polar bears, penguins. They've never been exposed directly to DDT. That shows that the toxic chemicals do not disintegrate. They constantly recycle in the nature. Another study done by the Journal of Environmental and Analytical Toxicology on Infants. This was done in 2015. They wanted to check the concentration of pesticide in postpartum meconium, which is the first stool of a newborn. This was a prenatal pesticide exposure evaluation. They tested about 4 different classes of pesticides, including organochlorine, DDT is one of them, and organophosphate, like nerve gas, like insecticides, the sprays that we use at home against the insects. As a result, they found 9 types of the pesticides detected in the meconium sample with significant rise. So the babies, before they're being born, unfortunately, they're contaminated, even with landing, a pesticide which is used in the US for termite. That shows that our babies are predisposed to degenerative diseases way before they are born, unfortunately. But don't worry about this stuff. I know that this information could be sometimes stressful or scary, but the reason that I talk about it is to create awareness. When we know what to do about them, when we know what they are first and do something about them, we will change our world, I promise you that. Today, let's talk about industrial pollutions, chemicals made by the industry and released in the nature. To start, a simple one. When you go do shopping, they give you a receipt. You use your credit card, your debit card, and you keep that receipt in your wallet. In the West, they use it to claim the taxes back, so they accumulate all of them in a whole year. This paper is a thermogenic paper, is a thermal paper. There's a coat on them covered by a chemical called BPA, polybisphenol A. This is an estrogen type compound, which unfortunately enters the body the moment you touch it. So through the skin, it comes to the body and it acts like estrogen inside our body. Of course, it will contaminate our hormone system. They say the man of today, on average, have about 50% of the sperm count of what they used to have back 50 years ago. This is because of estrogenic compounds, chemical compounds affecting our biology, especially the hormone system. The same thing happens in women as well. Many of women now are complaining about fertility or difficulties getting pregnant. This could be one of the reasons. There are additional estrogen type compounds, which I'm going to talk about that a bit later. But let's go back to these receipt papers. When they are covered with BPA, not only when you touch it, it enters your body and contaminates your hormone system, but when you throw it in recycled bins, it contaminates the rest of the stuff there. If any one of those recycled items are used to recreate something, they come with that BPA in them, whether it's a toilet paper or anything else. And when you expose them to the environment, they basically enter the water system and contaminate the water. Think about that. So next time when you want to get rid of these receipts, throw them not in the recycle bin, but in the garbage can so that they can be burned at the end. I'll give you examples of other types of chemicals which was made by industry and never been cleared by nature because of lack of proper natural enzymes to degrade them. A group of them called PCBs. They are persistent organic pollutants. And PCB stands for polychlorinated biphenyls. They used to be as electrical insulations. They were invented in the 1930s and were banned in the 1970s, specifically in 1977, when again the scientists realized that they have a very long half-life. They don't disintegrate very easily and stay in the environment. When the human adipose tissue survey was done, in addition to DDT byproducts, they found also PCBs in the fat of animals were tested. Because they cannot be broken by the nature, they can enter the biology of nature and they mimic hormone system. Therefore they predispose animals and people and natural, let's say, entities to various imbalances, health-wise, I mean. Some other groups are called dioxins, polyaromatic hydrocarbons, polyaromatic hydrocarbons. They're discovered back in the 1870s. They were not manufactured by industry, but they appeared as byproducts of industrial work. Like, for example, different forms of product manufacturing, molding, incineration processes when waste, especially municipal waste, was not burned properly, or burning organic or chemicals that contain chlorine, including plastics with chlorine. These chemicals, PCBs and dioxin, they manipulate our biology by dismantling our immune system. So when the immune system cannot function properly, it cannot do its job properly either. What is the job of the immune system? To protect us against any intruder, against anything which is not us, self versus non-self. So think about growth of microbes in the body of a person with immune system compromised. Think about autoimmune reaction, something that triggers an excessive attack by the immune soldiers, where the issue cannot be resolved and the soldiers keep attacking. They increase the risk of hormone problems, including thyroid dysfunctions. How many people do you know that complain of thyroid malfunction, either hypo or hyper? Reproductive issues, as I mentioned earlier, in both male and female. They expose people to degenerations within the cardiovascular system, digestive system, kidney and excretory system. They They cause damage to the liver and detoxification system, as well as predisposing people to diabetes and metabolic diseases. They could easily reduce the IQ of people, altering behavior, especially in children. And they are, of course, very toxic to babies and infants before they are being born. Dioxins are super, super toxic. They say, in terms of toxicity, they are second to radioactive material. Just think about it. Even part per billion could cause disruption in our biology. The same as PCBs, they cannot be also digested naturally, so they remain in the body for a long time, and affecting on the hormones and the rest of the system is very known by this kind of chemical toxicity. In addition, they cause also a lot of disturbances in the nervous system or neural structure. So think about Parkinson, ALS. These are degenerative diseases of the brain and the central nervous system, or even cancer. More importantly, dioxins could change the gene or the genes factor in us, so predisposing people to genetic altering or genetic problems, genetic predispositions to diseases, which could actually carried on to the next generations because it is related to the genes. Now, they tested the breast milk of the mother. They found dioxin concentration 80 times more there than in the blood of the mother. Because they are fat soluble, they cannot turn into water soluble to be excreted from the body. Anytime there is an excretion of any fatty substance like milk, they enter there to get out. So where they go to? In fact, when they tested the breast milk, they found about 350 different chemicals concentrated in the breast milk. Still, breast milk is the best food for the newborn, but think about the toxicity affecting our environment. So if we are not careful, this toxic level could stay high in every one of us for a very long time. These 350 chemicals they detected in the breast milk of a mother were the result of perfumes, chemical and industrial perfumes, suntan oils, household and dry cleaning chemicals, pesticide and industrial raw materials as well. There was another study done by the US Environmental Protection Agency over a 20-year period from 1970 to 1989. They checked about 50 chemicals out of thousands which are used in the industry. They found PCBs in 85%, DDT in 95%, which were banned back in the 70s. Think about that. And of course, they saw the cumulative effect of these toxins. Now, let's talk about pesticides. Almost every industrial cultivation is using pesticide to create larger amount of products, protecting them against damages by insects and improving the food security. But the problem is that they enter the environment and they cause disruption in the biology as well. In 2023, the total global pesticide use was 3.73 million tons. It was a double number in comparison to what it used to be back in the 1990s. They cause a lot of risk, potential health risk, not just for human health, but also for the health of every other organism in the nature. They contaminate soil, water, and they affect the non-targeted animals or insects as well. So they reduce biodiversity of insects. This is very, very difficult, and this will affect directly the lifespan of birds, biodiversity in birds, as well as aquatic organisms, because it ends up into the water system ultimately. The human exposure to pesticide could have acute and chronic effect. Acute effect, something that suddenly happens. It may include irritations of skin like dermatitis, respiratory diseases, gastrointestinal diseases, eye problems, ocular toxicity, nausea, vomiting, and headaches. The chronic exposure, which is over a very long time, could easily be associated with endocrine disruption because they are estrogen type compounds similar to dioxin, PCBs, the BPA I mentioned on the receipt papers, and so on. So a lot of reproductive abnormalities could happen, neurodegenerative diseases, again, such as Parkinson, cardiovascular diseases, and they could easily be carcinogenic. They could trigger cancer predisposition in people. Among these pesticides, we have a group of herbicides that are used to get rid of unwanted herbs like weeds. One of the most important one of them, which is very used in the most amount, could easily contaminate the water sources. And as a result, every more organism in the soil and water will be affected. This is called glyphosate. Glyphosate is the herbicide that is used in the largest amount. And in people, it is very famous to cause or to predispose people to, let's say, cancers, especially non-Hodgkin lymphoma. This is a cancer of lymphatic system. This was announced by the International Agency for Research on Cancer. So, as you can see, there is a lot of stuff happening around us which is beyond our control. I'm sure the governments of especially advanced countries are trying their best to organize this kind of toxicity, to control them, to educate people who are in contact with these kind of chemicals, either the farmers or the producers, so that they could do a better job with less contamination. But we cannot just rely on that. If we as consumers look for different products, if we choose not to buy the ones who are contaminating our environment, ultimately the industry has no choice but to shift and change. The governments have no choice but to modify their regulation. After all, even though this is a material world and it obligates everybody to look for securing only themselves by collecting more, we are here for a bigger purpose. The knowledge that will enable us to understand the true self, who we really are, and what we are doing here. It's not about just having a good life, having a good pension, being able to buy whatever we want and then die. We are here for higher purposes, and this is the purpose of our humanity. The knowledge is enlightenment. If you have any question, if you have anything to add, if you have anything of concern about these issues, please share it here with us. I'll take time to consider your question, and maybe we come up with some additional videos to answer these questions. Or maybe we can in future create interactive videos, so in a live program we can come online and talk about your experience or your action or whatever you need to share with the rest of the populations. After all, I'm a doctor. A doctor is a teacher, and I like to share my knowledge with people who may be interested to hear about this. In the next talk next week, we will talk about food processing technology. What happens to reduce the quality of our food? And if we keep eating highly processed food, what kind of sicknesses or illnesses or weaknesses could happen to us? If you like this video, please share it with others who may be thinking similar to you. And I'm hoping to see you next time in our next program. Have a good week.